Hey, legends, welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. Big episode today. Freo fans, we feel for you. Tough way to end this season. And Carlton, congratulations, I guess. I'm not really too sure. We're going to talk about that water bottle that was thrown against the umpire. Seriously, what is going on there? We're going to break that down. Lastly, some retirees. Razor Ray, the legend himself, finishes up. Dusty Martin, one of the goats of the game. He's done also. We're going to break that down much, much more. So settle in because we're starting now. All right, legends, let's get straight into this. There's a big episode coming out, but without further ado, welcome Brayden Cox.
Oh, g'day, Mace. Coming to the end of the year. Sad times, but
wrapping it up.
Yeah, I did. There was a bit of a roller coaster on Sunday because the games were all important. The other couple of days, they were just big blowouts to the finals teams. But I'm giving my clanger this week. I'm jumping straight into it because I'm giving it to the Fremantle Football Club.
Baby, roast 'em.
Because what the hell?
Yep.
St Kilda come out and did exactly what they had to do, which was no easy feat. They had to run over the top of Carlton, and they did it in the dying seconds with Jack Higgins snapping it across his body, big celebrations, scenes, all the Carlton fans, they kept showing them, crying in the stands, heads down.
Finals hopes are done.
It was like a 2022 flashback where you broke their hearts all over again. They were having all those traumatic experiences because all that had to happen for Carlton to get knocked out of the finals was we go over to Perth and we watch Freo win a home game against Port. Now, we know Port's good. We get around Ken Hinkley. They're now second on the ladder after the win. But come on. It was, literally season on the line. Your whole year, you've done, you started back before Christmas, all the hard sessions. You go away, you come back, you do all more hard sessions in the sun, the heat, Perth heat, 45-degree days, extras. You're doing your 2K time trials, your skinnies, you're missing family and friends and sacrificing weekends, no drinking, you're eating right, you're doing it all. And then you come up and you dish up that putrid shit that was that football game. I sent producer Harrow on the decks. I sent him a message saying Rochi's reserves, they would have rocked up and they at least would have had some ticker, Mace, because what they put out there, and I can look down here and every Fremantle fan on the planet Earth would be agreeing right now, nodding at the screen with their headphones in, because that was putrid. Like, one, pick up the ball. Two, you've got that many forwards in your team. Great list of forwards. Yeah, you got Big Dick Tracy. He's out at the moment, and he's an important pillar. But you got that many forwards. Collingwood would kill to have one of those blokes up there. But come on, they got 40 of them up there. Hit one of them. Just hit one of them, hit a lead, move the ball quick so you can get some action going because they just took so long. And Port was just, meandering back into D50, clogged the shit out of it, and then they rebound out of there. Sarong got tagged out of the game. First game in 40 years that he hasn't had over 20 disposals. Probably not the game for it.
Yeah.
And the moment that Hayden Young came off with his corked calf or whatever the hell he had, it was done. Yeah. It was game over. And they just did so many stupid things, little 50-metre penalties and So it's safe
to say Fremantle fumbled the bag rather than Port Adelaide won that game? Is that what you're trying to get at?
Port's good.
Because they're having an absolute crack right now at Fremantle.
The very evident thing, and this is disgusting for me to say, I can't say this because I don't play footy at any level and it's terrible. But looking at the two midfields, you look at Port and you go, there's some savage blokes that just want to win games of footy out there. They got Butters, they got Horny Frank. They get in there, they rip the ball out and they charge their team forward. And Freo didn't have that, which was very disappointing. Wow. But that's it. They're done. And this is probably a bit for later, but they also cost themselves a draft pick slot.
No, we'll talk about it later. We'll get into that later. I feel like you're still very hot. You've come off the top with absolute steam coming out of your ears at the moment. I just feel as though
hot because we give it a bit of energy that it deserves, and I'm just angry on behalf of the Freo fans because that was pus. Tackle. You know, they put up they put up the Fox Footy pressure stats. I don't know what that is, but they were in the poor.
Calculator.
There's excellent up one end, and then there's Freo down the other end. In the poor, red. So, you think if the whole season's on the line, you probably want to be up in the green.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Anyway, what's your
Well, I'm going to continue the grilling, and my clanger of the week. Obviously, there's a bit of media you could say around this. Now, in the Carlton versus St Kilda game, there was a bit of a disgusting act, as you could say, that was done. A water bottle that was thrown at a goal umpire. Just absolutely ridiculous. Just weak as piss, you could say. And they're going through the details now, trying to find the person on cameras and stuff that did it and try to ban them or whatever the retro ban's going to be for that. But that's just I know it's terrible to say that from the beginning, but that's just shit. Like, you're a terrible human to be doing that stuff. Like, these people are not getting paid the big money to be there. They absolutely love football. They take all the criticism, everything on board. And you're going to do that to someone. Like, if it was a player, it would be just as bad. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like there would be a lot more uproar around it.
Yeah.
But because it's an umpire, it's not as much. But the guy was bleeding out of the back of his head. They had to take him off and put him on, essentially put him on ice for the rest of the game. And for something that is so controllable, like, you would think even the people around him, after him or her, whoever did it, would be sitting there going, mate, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And they'd be pointing them out and saying, get that fella or girl out of this joint. That is not acceptable. And you hold people to a higher standard. You really do. And I just think that was something over the weekend you saw and you just said, man, that's not what being a footy fan's about.
We've talked about players overstepping the mark at times this year when, you might boo, but it brings out the passion in you, and there's definitely a line that you can cross. And I think throwing a bottle at someone, you should be able to go anywhere without being assaulted, but you should be able to go to your workplace, do your job without fear of being assaulted by someone, especially with, it's a weapon, it's a projectile. So hopefully they track him down, and there's no way that they're not tracking down this person.
You best believe there are that many cameras at Marvel. If they haven't caught the person yet, I'm blown away. Yeah. You've got tickets of who's in what seats. You can easily email them back. Everyone's got their email attached to it. You've got all the camera angles. You've got the people sitting around them. I'm amazed they haven't had the person ousted yet. It's incredible.
They'll have face scanning technology. They'll get them, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's one of those self-report things where in the light of day, you come out and you go, I've made a big mistake.
What do you do? Ban for life?
Yeah, you probably have to.
Yeah, because ban for life for sure.
Yeah, you can't you can back someone in. Obviously, everyone gets a chance to be rehabilitated, but you probably lost your privilege to be able to go and enjoy the sport that other people are just there trying to enjoy. We all do love the passion in it. It's what makes the sport what it is, but you can't cross the line.
That's just beyond stepping over the line. And that's my clanger of the week because it's unacceptable if I'm being honest with you. And yeah, I understand umpires, you can get passionate about calls they make and things like that, but there's definitely a line there of letting them be able to go to their job, do their job without being assaulted by people in the crowd. That is absurd to think that actually happened. Yeah. So, clanger to you. But let's get to the results, man. Let's get into the next stuff.
Ridiculous. And we like the results this week because off the top, Melbourne, they went down to the mighty Magpies, 57-103. That's a big win to finish off the season for Collingwood. Hawthorn Footy Club. Oh, my God. Wow. Now, I saw a couple of players out there from the Hawthorn team getting stuck into the North team, and it's pretty easy when you can say, we were tipped to be down the bottom with yous, and look where we are.
70 points.
You got to be, as a North fan, we're very conscious about sticking the boots in.
We'll get that. We'll get into that later.
Geelong got the job done over West Coast. They're happy to knock off, I reckon, for the year. It'd be very annoying to fly all the way over here, all the way down to Geelong, then all the way back. So I feel a bit sorry for the West Coast Eagles players. Yeah. So have a good break. Recharge, go again. Richmond, knock off. You're done too. Big retirees at the end of that. We saw Dusty, teary-eyed Dustin Martin coming from the field, which was
Pickett, Grimes.
Different to see. I loved seeing that. A bit of the human side come out and a bit of vulnerability as he walked off the MCG for the last time. And
playing against Gold Coast, obviously Dimmer's over there coaching and stuff. And there would have been people within that program that he was connected with through his time at Richmond. So I think emotional for him leaving Richmond, but also having those kind of people that were at the game that he was competing or the team was competing against, still be involved would have been a lot.
And we saw another goodbye. Dyson Heppel got to say his goodbye to all the loyal Brisbane Lions fans at the Gabba. That was good to see.
Wow.
Got chaired off, 87 points to 67. Real stinker by the looks of the scoreboard. Brisbane could have absolutely dominated, but just decided not to kick goals. They just wanted to do it 1 point at a time, which was great for all the spectators.
Good feedback.
Sydney v Adelaide. Sydney getting the points there. You know, Adelaide, so-so year. Very dangerous at times.
Had a few upsets, Adelaide. They upset a few people along the way.
And then a couple of stinkers along the way. So, Western Bulldogs GWS starting off the Super Sunday, and that was a wild game. Out of Ballarat, wins aplenty. Western Bulldogs got the job done, which locked them into finals because we probably didn't, talk about that enough that if they had lost that game, they were a chance to miss the whole thing. So, pretty wild, but they got the job done over GWS. Carlton, wow.
Just wowie. We're going to dive into that a bit deeper
Carlton
here.
fans breathing big exhale after losing to St Kilda.
Yikes.
I don't know how you feel about making finals after a loss.
Yeah,
but
it was a real depressing and exciting day, wasn't it? There's a lot of emotions on Sunday as a Carlton fan if you're out there.
And then Freo, oh my God, it's just... Oh, my
fumble.
God.
Fumble. That's a butt fumble. If I've
That's
seen one.
the worst. Anyway, let's jump straight into the big talking points because I do want to just... We need to go back. We need to acknowledge this. We need to do a mini reflect on it because it wasn't us. To be fair, there's a lot of people in the media, probably too many people.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't know what to say, so they just throw shit.
Yeah.
Now, this is coming...
Us educated podcasters obviously would never do such a thing, Brayden.
See, well, if you're going to sling shit, like I sling shit at Freo at the start of the podcast, do it in the last game so they can't come out next week and win and make you look like an idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're done.
Timing. It's
so
all about timing.
I've got 6 months of being right.
Yeah.
So that's how you do it.
6 months till they can prove me wrong.
So take that. That's got to really suck. Anyway, everyone came out after 3 coaches in particular.
Yeah.
We got Chris Fagan, Kenny Hinkley, and we got Bevo, Luke Beveridge. They were mid-season. Yeah. They were all sacked.
Yeah.
Everyone sacked them. You can't go on after that loss. You can't go on after that loss. Well, it turns out every team sucked this year. They all had patches. Even Sydney Swans that were so far ahead had a terrible patch, a horrific patch. So
that's weird. Those 3 coaches, they're in finals, aren't they?
So Kenny Hinkley
it's wild,
second
isn't it?
on the
You
ladder
wouldn't believe it.
with a double chance home final. But they sacked him mid-year. His own team, his fans were booing him off the field. Right. They had the sign as you entered Adelaide. I don't even know if that was this year because they want to sack him every year.
Yeah, it's a consistent thing for
talk
some
about
stupid reason.
Character building, resilience.
Talk about resilience, yes. Resilience under pressure. Ken Hinkley's your man. Write a book, sir. Write an absolute book. Do some talks because you epitomize it.
He could go on and he could be the CEO of a Forbes top 100 whatever company on the planet Earth. He deals with pressure that well.
Yeah, insane.
Anyway, we always
got to give our Ken Hinkley love every week.
he's up the tippy top because then you have Bevo and Fags who Fags Brisbane started slow, rolled back into it. They're still probably one of the more informed teams in the comp.
Would agree.
Start with the big home final up there against Carlton, and then Bevo. Well, we know that he likes to finish and have a run at the flag from the bottom 4 of the 8. It's just where he's comfortable doing it from. Who needs the double chance when you can just defy the odds? So he's back in finals as well. He's taken them to a couple. He's won them a flag. Everyone needs to just chill.
Give them flowers. Come on.
We give some space.
Yeah.
We need a little next year. The media, like everyone. I say we, but we sit down, we reflect. We don't go as hard week to week because
give a bit of feedback to the media, Brayden.
We have looked stupid at times ourselves.
No, of course not.
You were you were overly steadfast on Gold Coast.
Yeah.
You put your hand up for that one. That's on you. But GWS, I'm still here and I must be just correct all the time. Anyway,
you were questioning you halfway through that. You had a little spot there. You were going, how much I'm off the bandwagon.
I was 1 game off.
It was about 4 weeks outside.
Now we go into the North Melbourne situation because this is the whole...
Give me some stats, Brayden.
Are we kicking them while they're down? To kick them while they're down, they got to be down.
Yep.
but they're never up. North is never up, so we can't kick them while they're up. They've been down for 5 seasons in a row. Now, if you're a North fan, are you putting up with this, Mace? 2020, 3 wins. 2021, 4 wins. So they're on the way up.
Building.
2022, 2 wins. That's half as many wins. 2023, 3 wins. 2024, 3 wins.
Sustained.
So they actually went backwards in percentage this year. So they got beaten worse more often this year than last. So that's...
You say that, but then I think like in the beginning of the year, North, like we were like, oh, dude, North is putting up some numbers, like putting teams to the sword.
They were competitive.
Because it used to be like 2-3 years ago. North was like, I mean, you look at their scores and stuff, it was probably like a 60, 70 point win from other teams, like on average. And I know over the weekend they got smashed, but like at the beginning of the year, there was a bit of hope for North. There was a bit of hope.
That's a lot of leeway you're giving to a club. I did write it out that it was if you combine all the points they got from all their wins over the last 5 years. So you take their last 5 years, you combine all the wins, they would have finished 5th this year on percentage.
15 wins, you would be 5th.
5th.
With 5 years.
5 years worth of wins. You combine them all up and they missed the top 4 on percentage.
Jeez, that's rough.
How do you sit there as a fan and you just... Someone did something horrific.
If you're still a Melbourne fan, though, North Melbourne fan, credit to you. Credit to you for sticking with them. Oh, yeah. You know, it's not easy. I'm sure it's been tough over the last few years. Every team has to go through this, right? Yeah. But, yeah, just credit to you. I mean, I know it's hard.
That's the disappointing point because everyone says every team goes through it, but then you can clearly identify a few teams that don't go through it, like Sydney and Geelong, and you're like, they don't go through it. But, yeah, I get it because we've all been there where it's like you've had a shitty week at work and you just want to go home and watch your team be good at footy.
Just want to have some kind of hope.
And all through 2020, all through the pandemic, and then coming out and still no good. But we can see the list. The list should be getting better. So maybe it's a mentals thing. Yeah. Have a bit of maybe a Bali retreat or something over the off season and spark some, I don't know, some juice coming out.
Always kind of helps.
Anyway.
We'll move to the next thing. We got the wild card round. There's been a lot of conversation around whether or not this should be something they implement next year or further years. I mean, next year's probably a bit soon, but there's a lot of people saying it's a possibility.
Now, don't tune out. If you're listening to the podcast now and you've heard every shock jock talk about this shitty topic, don't tune out. Don't switch podcasts. Stay with us because we're going to... It's just the counterpoint for me that everyone talks about. It promotes mediocrity. You know, the season's made up of X amount of games and you got to win those. First of all, you obviously have the counterpoints of when it was back in the day, early 90s, there wasn't as many finals. Like there wasn't as many finalists. They expanded, more teams, more finals. They've expanded a couple times now once Tassie comes in. More teams, more finals would make the most sense, or at least a chance to have more teams in there. Because if you're at the AFL, at the AFL house, you want fans to have glimmers of hope.
Yeah.
Like you want your team, even if they're finishing in the lower end of the top 8 or whatever, top 10, you want them to experience finals. And if you're looking at North and you've gone years and years without finals. One, why would anyone want to barrack for North? How do they get new?
It's rough.
Any team. Man. But how do they get new followers? How do they get new fans? If you if you have a kid and you're like, nah, trust me, North's a great team. Like, how do you
generational support? They have no choice.
You got to be a great marketer to get your kid to come across to North Melbourne. But like things like that. But yeah, I just feel like, one, the fixture isn't even in the first place. Now, obviously, I think that that's the biggest
thing to fix.
Biggest thing to fix. It's the easiest thing to manipulate to kind of shape the top 8. If you look at Carlton and Collingwood finished on the same amount of points, same amount of wins. Percentage was the difference, 7%, and Carlton makes the finals. They made a prelim last year. So they should have skewed a heavier, harder fixture, but they got North twice, they got Richmond twice, the 2 bottom teams, and then they got West Coast. So there's 5 wins. They just go there, gift them 5 wins, whereas Collingwood didn't get any double ups with the bottom teams and they had to verse the top teams twice. So, like, that's an easy way to manipulate it. And when you talk about, it's just promoting mediocrity. If you look at that, Carlton's lost 6 of their last 9 games. The 3 wins that they had were against North, Richmond, and West Coast.
Yeah.
And they're taken up 8th slot after losing to Saints, who aren't a top 8 team. And you're like, what's promoting mediocrity? Getting it done early in the season and then absolutely like the arse end falls out of it as you're coming home, or the teams that have some momentum that finish 9th and 10th. Have a little play-in tournament.
It's always tough to gauge if a team's going to be good before the season, right? I think you obviously look at kind of where teams fall the year before and you say, like, here's a mathematical thing of saying, like, Sydney doesn't play the 18 team
Collingwood
twice in a year.
Hawthorn twice this year. No one would have known Hawthorn was going to be great.
Yeah, but there's also the thing of, like, Collingwood has to play Essendon twice, Collingwood has to play Carlton twice, so I get that side of it because there is money and financials that go into that. The AFL looks at and says, okay, with biggest following, biggest kind of attendance, also the biggest people are going to watch on TV, like there's CBAs and all this kind of stuff with television rights along those lines too, so you have to be able to fit all these things in. So it's not as clear cut as just saying first doesn't play 18 twice, second doesn't play 17 twice. There's a bit more that goes into it just because of the way the IFL, financially wants to try to make as much money as possible. And I get that, but as a Collingwood player, I can't say that, we haven't been given a fortunate schedule because you look at Perth, they're traveling every other week, and you look at the Gold Coast, and I get that side of it. But going back to Carlton and the 6 of the last 9 they've lost and the 3 they win are essentially the bottom 3 teams. I don't think you'd be, as a Carlton fan, going, I feel super confident going into finals, baby. We lost our last one and we thought we're out, and then Fremantle fumbled it, and then we're back in, and then we've got a few injuries. That will be sweet. Yeah, I don't think there's many Carlton fans probably feeling that.
Because the counterpoint is Freo doesn't deserve a second chance at it either.
Freo had a hard run at the very end of the year too, though. Yeah. So it's an interesting one. And this is, I think, why the wild card round keeps coming up is because essentially from Freo was second on the ladder like 4 weeks ago. Yeah. And then you look at it now, they've fallen out of the 8. So I think that whole situation of 2 through 8 being so 2 through really 12 being so close has made people go, oh man, like AFL's probably gone, sweet, we can engage the audience for longer by putting another round in, right? Yeah. It might be during the bye week.
Yeah,
you've got the bye week, you put it in there. Does it probably disadvantage those teams going in there because they don't have another break? Yes, of course, but that's just part of the system. But for them, it's going, oh, sweet, extra game, extra money, extra viewership, keeps fans engaged for longer because they know their team has a chance to make finals. There's all these kind of benefits the AFL looks at from a financial standpoint. Goes probably, okay, like if we can do this and the players and the coaches and the teams all tick it off, they'll probably do it. Yeah. It's silly. I mean, like we look at all the AFL decisions and like, the AFL doesn't exist if they don't make money. So if you're always going to assess something like this that they know will make a financial impact, they'll always assess it and probably are on the side of doing it. Yeah.
It does make sense. I feel like once Tassie comes in, it's a no-brainer. You got to be doing it. Let's jump into the big winners because we're getting hyped for finals. I mean, well, we're kind of hyped. Mace isn't there. But the Bulldogs big winners over GWS. Got them at the top of the big winners this week. Although GWS, a lot of late outs, a lot of really important late outs for them. So they'll hopefully get those top back up to be more competitive for the first week of finals. But let's jump in. Bulldogs.
Can we just talk about the wind? Yeah. Mate, some of the stuff I was watching over the weekend of just kicking it essentially out on the full and just swinging back and going through. Yeah. Oh, Ballarat, far out. Don't get me wrong, it's great to go to the country and play, but you'd be hoping for better conditions than that.
Yeah, especially when the season is on the line, like for the Bulldogs and,
GWS top 4. Looking at that.
Positions and all of that stuff. To have it out at Ballarat, I thought that was hindsight. Obviously, they can never tell like where all this is going to fall. But yeah, it was a bit wild seeing blokes there was a couple of old houses that you can see in the background and you basically have to kick it at the roof of the old house on the right for it to drift back through and get blown through the goals. It was just wild to see because Jamara had a shot kicking into the breeze like 30 out dead in front and it went out of bounds on the full after he kicked it to the left of goals. Yeah. It drifted that far across the entire face of the goals.
He just kind of looked at it and was like, this is ridiculous. Yeah. just rolled out to the next thing. Yeah. He just had this blank look of like, how in the world am I playing in these conditions right now?
Jesse Hogan kicked one and it went dead straight. And he was like, wait, that's meant to...
Huh?
Where's the wind now? He must have found some pocket. But anyway, Bulldogs, massive win for them. It gives them final
spot.
Yeah, I was going to say, it gives them a final spot, which is great. But now they're playing at the MCG in a home final against Hawthorn when it's Hawthorn's home ground.
Yeah.
And they're not playing at Marvel. But who knows? Who knows?
Who knows?
But anyway, let's jump into Port. Yep. Port, massive win over Freo, not only knocking Freo out of finals, but locking up top two for them. They basically just had to not lose by 5 goals.
Yeah.
So they just, the win was for a bit of momentum and to just screw over Freo.
Yep.
But yeah, locks in a top 2 spot for Port.
Huge.
Have you played a home game against Port in
finals?
In Adelaide though, ever?
Not in finals, no.
No, but you would have.
No, I don't think so.
In general.
Played.
You've played a few MCG games.
I don't think we've ever played a postseason finals match against them in the last 10 years.
No, but like during the season.
Oh, during the season, yeah, of course. Yeah.
How is it over there? How hostile is it? How's the crowd?
It's absurd, man. Because it's like these things of like people sit like behind the bench and just hurl abuse and stuff. And it's like whenever you warm up, so like you kind of like run back and forth on the boundary to like get the legs warm after, halftime or something if you're on the bench to start. And people just give it to you. They just heckle the living shit out of you. It is insane. And Port fans are, they give it to you. They don't hold back. They don't hold back one bit. So I think you look at the teams, I think Port Adelaide's kind of one of the most abusive fan bases out there.
Yeah. Well, they went wild in the showdown the other week. So, if
the whole showing the teeth thing just riled them up, and they were just ready to fire in their eyes.
A prelim final chance on the line, home game in Adelaide. The fans are going to bring it. Never Tear Us Apart is going to be wild.
It'd be a great atmosphere.
The march to the stadium is going to be wild. Hopefully the sun's on point. It's nice there. Does the breeze come through the stand where there's no stand for the hill?
Yeah, the breeze is a bit unique because there's no stand behind. And there's just a grass hill, and then there's stands on the other side. So you get a bit swirly at times. But it's a great place to play. Well, one, because it's a small ground, so as a big fella, you don't like to run around as much. So it's kind of nice to be able to get to contest without killing yourself. But I love it, man. It's a great atmosphere every time you go there. And the crowd just being so passionate just makes the atmosphere so much better.
And we're going to see a little Ken Hinkley jig over there, maybe.
Yes,
hopefully that's what we're all waiting for. Hawthorn and Geelong, well, they just boosted their morale heading into finals just by absolutely murdering their opponents on the weekend. So just a little drive-by just to say, well done.
Just a little drive-by to the teams at the bottom just to really just dig the dagger in.
No, well, this one's another drive-by.
Shout out to Tom Hawk. Did a little lap of honor over there in Geelong too, so I want to shout that out.
And Zach Tui.
And Zach Tui, yeah. So tough to see an international fella retire up. One of the absolute legends of the game, the Torp King, you almost call him.
Yeah.
But him and Tom Hawk, the last game at the Geelong Stadium was pretty special. So shout out to that. That was cool to see.
It was nice because there was a moment where, Tom Hawkins is getting interviewed post-game and he was mindful that West Coast was lined up for the Guard of Honour. So he kind of cut his interview short so West Coast could get off the field, and then he could go back out there and do a million laps. Yeah. But that was nice. Seems like just such a nice person. He's one of those blokes that you want him to talk about himself for a bit of reflection. Yeah. And he just keeps saying how good everyone else is.
Yeah.
It's like, we get that. That's not the time for this. Yeah.
No one else is retiring but you and Zach, so talk about you guys.
Yeah. And then this one, I just chucked this one in there. I don't know if I've mentioned I don't like to kick North while they're down, but Richmond lost their last game of the season to lock up the number 1 draft pick.
Smart. Why do you say North? Was that maybe possibly a thing they did in the past with Harley Reid? I don't know.
1, they cost themselves Harley Reid. 2, they almost won the spoon again by losing by as much as they did. If Richmond had beat the Suns at the G, not saying that they could have if they tried real hard, but they locked in the number 1 draft pick, and that's how it's done.
If Richmond won, I think it was 0.4 percentage difference, and all of a sudden, North Melbourne gets the first pick. It would have been insane.
Wild. Anyway.
Smart Richmond. Smart, thinking long term, love that.
But now, as a case study, if you look back and it's like, wins matter more than like number one draft picks. We're a year on. North isn't any better. Probably technically worse with the percentage, and they don't have the number one draft pick, so they kind of didn't get anything. So next time, if you can lose to win the number one draft pick, maybe just lose. Anyway,
North fans gonna love us after this podcast.
I don't think they were big fans of ours anyway.
So Kanga. Subscribe on all the different platforms.
Yeah. Subscribe just to hate on us. That's great. And then St Kilda,
big shout out. That was
just
unreal.
A big win.
Just a win they didn't need to have. It didn't do anything for the season, but just a real dagger for Carlton fans. Like the emotion in their faces as that game finished. Such a close one. Snap over the shoulder by Higgins. Just the one guy that you probably go, he's going to celebrate. He's going to let you know.
He did that kick earlier in the game where he hit it that hard. He just put everything into it. His whole body like levitated off the ground.
Insane.
And he still managed to have the accuracy to put it through the middle, which is great. I just wanted to give them a little bit of love because a couple of weeks ago I was like, they're winning these games on the run home. It must be a bit frustrating as a fan that it's like, where was this earlier in the season to give us a chance at finals? But like now I think it's at a point you'd flip-flop it around. You've come to terms with you're not making finals, and then you're just happy that your team's kind of being competitive all the way to the end. Ross talked about how it's important for sponsors and members and all that to treat it with the respect that it deserves.
It also shows you have a good culture where people don't just lay over.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't really have anything on the line. You say, stuff it, I don't care. Like, we're still going to give our best.
And it gives them confidence going into next year. Like, they beat Geelong the other week. Then they're beating these finals-bound teams. So they're thereabouts. So
it's very similar to us against Melbourne. Like, it was very low possibility we're ever going to make finals, but still put out a really good performance. So I think it's a good sign your culture's in a good place.
Absolutely. Let's jump into the big losers. Freo.
Did you mention this one? Freo? Did you mention Freo about this?
It deserves 5 or 6 slots in this podcast. So if you're a Freo fan, this is cathartic. We're doing it for you. It's not at you.
We're going to get it out of our system, and then we're going to start fresh for next year.
Because I love Freo. As I've mentioned many times, my housemate is a Freo diehard. I was barracking as hard as I could at the TV.
Justin's a legend. Matthew Boyd's a legend.
Longy. It's a great place over there. They just couldn't get the win, which is annoying. They lost their last 4 to fumble finals. Went to the Essendon game, which started it all off. Big 5-goal lead, and they just couldn't get it done. That last centre clearance that they streamed out of the middle and kicked the winning point or whatever it was, that was just like, you stop that centre clearance.
Deflating, that's for sure.
And it's all done. But they also cost themselves a draft pick slot because losing, they dropped below Collingwood, and Collingwood is giving them their first round pick. So it might be one of those ones that we look back and go like, there was a kick after the siren that Richmond won, and they ended up locking in Dustin Martin as their draft pick. You never know how it rolls out. It could be another one of those situations. But, pretty amazing fall from grace of Freo, who only 4 weeks ago was
top 4, top 2 maybe.
Top 2. So
shout out to all the Freo fans. We feel for you right now.
The
it's
pain.
Not easy.
The pain.
Man.
Now, Carlton, I was umming and ahhing whether to chuck them in the biggest winners or the biggest losers, because they had
both.
They had a shocking loss against the team outside the 8 when it was all on the line for them. In their heads, it was all on the line.
All within their power. Win, make finals. Like, it was all up to them.
And they'd had some injuries. They went across to West Coast and got a decent win against West Coast, who obviously haven't dished up much in the past couple of weeks. But, they went on to lose that game. They had all the momentum. The crowd got back into it. They hit the lead, and then Higgins kicks the winner.
Kicks the dagger.
Couple of shocking things to look back on and reflect for them, I'm sure.
They got to move on, though. They're in finals. They're in 8.
That's it. You got the 2 weeks. You got to rest, recover, and get all your injured players back, or as many as you can, to reload and go again. McGovern out hamstring late and stuff like that. It's you can't lump it all on injuries, because if you look back, it's like I said, it's 6 of their last 9. Yeah. So they've only had injuries for a couple of weeks.
The momentum being important in finals, and this is not looking good for them.
Yeah, they have
There's still a chance. They're in.
They probably have one of the hardest trips. If you're looking at the top 8 at the moment, they have to go up to the Gabba and versus Brisbane at the Gabba, week 1 of finals in the elimination. So it's going to be a massive game. Hopefully a big turnout. Hopefully the fans can get up there, just see how confident they are that they can beat Brisbane, to see how many go up there. One last one, big losers, Melbourne.
Oof.
Just the game in general, but you could just see they were just done.
But even their club over the last 2 or 3 weeks has copped quite a bit of criticism, and it's like one of those things where obviously you haven't finished on the top of the ladder in the top 8, but then you pile on all the speculation and everything else that's going on, and it just kind of makes the whole experience as a Melbourne fan just feel kind of gross. Just over the weekend, like I remember sitting there finishing the game, like looking at him thinking like, it's got to be tough. It's got to be a tough position to be in at the moment. Obviously, they've been knocked out of finals quite a few times, and back-to-back kind of losses, and people always pile on that, and they did win the premiership recently, so they've had success. But after that premiership, there was all this expectation that they were going to do it again and again and again. And since then, they just haven't been able to get back to that point. So you feel for Melbourne fans, but it's just kind of one of those things you have to suss out everything over the off season, and then go in with a fresh kind of attitude and mindset for the next year.
It is footy. There is it reminded me a bit of like the 2016-17 times where Collingwood would go to start the season and it would feel like, I don't know if I was going to say I don't know if journos do this on purpose, but they definitely do. Holding a story till the eve of the season, drop a big bombshell that rattles a club. There was a couple of years, I feel like, in a row where Collingwood went through that, and it starts your season off shaky, which is the Clayton Oliver stuff over the whole off season for them, and then it rolled into the Petrarca spleen injury, and now the speculation around him wanting out, a fair few of their players exploring options. It's just a rough time to be a supporter when all of that happens, and that's what I will say about Collingwood. I said it last week. They hold on to players. Even in tough times, you guys are finishing second last, unless obviously you screw up your salary cap situation and then you have to, offload a couple. Players want to stay there. So it's a rough one for fans to sit back and hear players from their club saying, I want to go somewhere else. I want to explore other options. I think that's as deflating as anything. Yeah, definitely. So horror run for them this year, 14th, but and then the second
They're
loss.
Still a good team. They've got the talent for
Collingwood, that doesn't help. After Stephen May, I don't know if you remember the comments, May. Stephen May said we're a hell of a lot better team than Collingwood. Can't believe Collingwood won the grand final. Well, guess what?
I think he had a few drinks before that comment.
You're both not there. You're both not there this season, so we can all look back and laugh at that as we jump into the Collingwood game, because you did beat Melbourne quite convincingly in the end. It must have been a good feeling to get out there and finish the season with a W.
Yeah, it took a bit longer than expected.
Yeah.
It took a little bit longer than expected.
60-minute plus last quarter.
Dude, looking up at the scoreboard, and I didn't know the clock would go that far up. It was 65 minutes or something. I was like, I've never seen that before. Interesting. It's a great way to end the season. Obviously, you'd want to be in the top 8 and playing finals, but given the circumstances, and I think it was a bit of you go into that game knowing there's a low probability, but to show up and still, provide kind of your best and be able to get that win on the last game of the season was a good way to wrap it up, I think, in a sense, with the with the circumstances that are.
Yeah, and I think Fly said a few funny comments in his presser. But he said in that last game, you did get to learn a fair bit about your list. Obviously played a lot of kids. Dan McStay out with Sauna, Slate, and stuff like that. So a lot of these kids came in, not kids, young men, came in, played, their early starts of their career. What did you think that you learnt from your list, not only in that game, but this year, because you've had a lot of injuries, a lot of ins and outs.
There's been a lot of opportunity, I think, for the young guys this year, which has been awesome. And I think they've really kind of showed how good they are and that they can actually play at the level. I think obviously you want kind of the best players playing and play. We have a very experienced team, and some of those people were injured throughout the year, and that's just kind of part of it. But you look back on the year as a whole and you kind of realize we essentially tied 2 games where you score 1 point, one behind in one of those games, you win it, and also can go the other way, don't get me wrong, but 1 more point and you're essentially in finals. Yeah. It's such a close margin in that sense. So that's one of the biggest lessons, I think. But for us, it was a great way to be able to get experience into some of our players, given the circumstances we had. And, you're pretty proud of some of the guys that stepped up in the moment and were able to kind of provide on the big stage.
It is good. Ed Allen, tell me a bit about him because he's a big boy. When I saw him out there, I was like, he's one of the men.
He's a pretty tall midfielder, right?
Yeah.
He's a pretty tall midfielder. And, it's a tough midfield to kind of crack into. So he's definitely had to do his time in the VFL, but over the weekend played really well and I think showed different signs of his capabilities and what he can bring to the table. So definitely look out for him as one of those that's going to be hopefully in our future playing games and at the club long term.
Speaking of tall, I saw you rub the top of Darcy Cameron's head, and I was like, "Geez, you're a lot taller than him." I was like, "You are big."
Yeah.
How tall is
he? Darcy Cameron's probably 2 or 3 inches shorter than me at least.
That's wild. I was like, Jesus, who's this freak?
Yeah, I know. Who's this freak? Who's this tree out there?
Praying Mantis hand came over and just ruffled him on the head. Good on you, champion. Good on you, little fella. I was like, oh my God, this guy's what? Anyway, let's jump into some odd intricacies about the game. I did want to jump into Razor Ray's last game. We love Razor. We had Razor on the pod. One of the all-time pods that we've done. Spoke with such eloquence and articulation that it annoyed me that I was agreeing with an umpire as much as I did.
Time, wasn't it?
It was just went in locked and loaded to be like, why don't you just, the one where it was like, why don't you just umpire like the grand final every week? And he broke it down
as to the reason.
As to why I'm an idiot. And I was like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
But
if you haven't heard that one, look it up on the, look it up on the search bar. And he speaks really well. And I think you'll leave that being more understanding of what umpires have to go through and why they do what they do.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting chat that I think a lot of people can learn from.
Yeah, and I hope he stays in umpiring in some facet because he's definitely in it for 100% of the right reasons and wants the game to flourish and all of that stuff. So
I want to see as a role for Razor Ray, I'm going to put this out there to the public right now.
Yeah.
In the NFL, they have an ex-umpire or an ex-referee that anytime there's a questionable call or something that happens that's controversial, they go to him and say, what's the facts? What's the ruling around this? What's going on? And that person just gives it to him straight, says, this is the rule, this is where it's at, this is the code, blah, blah. I say, go to Channel 7, Razor Ray, be hired by them. So anytime there's a questionable thing where the commentators aren't really sure what's going on or maybe it's a bit of a question mark, he goes, here's the facts, bang, bang, bang. This should be called this way.
Yeah,
I think he'd be incredible for that position.
It's a no-brainer, but I figure it's so obvious to have that person as a role that they mustn't be doing it for a reason. Because at the moment, the commentators just guess, the public is none the wiser, and it leaves a negative opinion on some of these calls that were correct. But
it's still opinionated though.
Yeah.
So like Ray could go and do that Channel 7 stuff and he could say, yep, this is the way it should be adjudicated. 100%. Then it's called different on the field. So it's a lot of responsibility to put your name out there and say, okay, I might be wrong while I'm speaking on it, and just know that the game sometimes is not going to follow the rules or might be swayed one way because of an umpire's opinion on the day.
Yeah. And it's just educating everyone.
Let's go to the rest of the stuff.
Anyway, no, we got to get into Razor Ray.
Got to give him his flowers.
Razor Ray retired, amazing career. Would have, umpired a million games, done all the grand finals. He's done everything there is to do. Good mate of yours.
Yep.
Moments shared pre-game or anything? Did you talk to the big fella?
Pre-game, post-game, yeah. It was cool to kind of see him. And I rocked up. I didn't know he was actually umpiring on the day. You go in, they've got a sheet on the wall next to the schedule and says who's umpiring, the 4 major umpires or however many there is. And Razor was on there. And I was like, oh, wow, this might be his last game he'll ever umpire. It's kind of cool to be involved in that because he's such an icon of the sport, I feel like. Love or hate him, you know who he is, and he's been able to cop the criticism and everything else and be a face of umpiring for a long time. So, going out there, I was just kind of had a big smile on my face like he always does, and just said all the best, man. What an incredible journey, and I'm really excited about the next chapter and stuff like that. And then after, you just say congratulations. And it was great to see everyone cheer him off. And there was a few boos in the crowd, I know that. Frustrating. So that should be my clanger, to be honest.
I saw him having some words as he was leaving with his family. His family, and he was going back and forth to someone in the crowd. It's like you have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they didn't know that it was his last game, or even though he just walked through a guard of honor. But at the same time, who gives a shit? Don't abuse people as they come from the ground. It doesn't make any sense.
Man, he's given so much to the game, copped so much criticism and everything else, and he's still done it with a smile. And I don't think there's many people that could do what he's done. So I think you have to give credit to a person like that, a person that's dedicated a huge chunk of his life to trying to make the game better. And, it was great to see both teams give him the respect and, clap him off. And I asked him, I said, do you want to be chaired off? He just looks at me and he goes, no freaking chance. And I was like, I had to ask. You just never know, right?
Good.
You never be taller in your life.
You and Gorney or something.
The funny thing is, so Ray, I can tell this story now that he's retired. So Ray, back in the USIFL, there was this kind of celebration after it, and I was like, Ray, jump on my shoulders, mate. I had a few beers. So there's a photo of me and Ray's full on my shoulders. Ray's on my shoulders. I'm going to find this. On my shoulders. He's like, yeah, just going nuts. It was so funny, man. But he's just an absolute character, an absolute legend of the game. And I'm excited for him to hopefully stay involved in some capacity.
It reminds me of one of those cartoons where they stack each other up, the two short blokes, and they put the trench coat over the top.
It's real Space Jam.
Razor's never been as tall. But yes, that's awesome. Congratulations, Razor. Great career. Yeah, amazing career. And I always think that, like, compared to the NRL's officials, like, AFL umpires remember everyone's first name in the entire league and gives them the respect by calling them by their first name at all times. Whereas, like, the NRL, it's like you only speak to the captain and you don't even really say their names. It's quite wild, but it's very impressive. It's like he could be a barista in the future because he'd remember everyone's names and orders coming back in. Let's go into
mortgages, and home loans is what he does in his spare time. So
we kind of glossed over the lightning delay, but you had a lightning delay in your game.
Very weird.
How did you know it was coming during the game? Like, it was getting pretty ominous there. You could hear it through the broadcast. What was it like?
It kind of like started spitting in like the fourth quarter, and you go, okay. And then at one point there was this big lightning strike that kind of like lit up the sky. And then, with lightning, as soon as you see the lightning, you kind of count. I think it's like you count the seconds after to figure out how far it is from you.
Yeah.
And it's maybe like 1 second's like, 5 miles or something like that. So, I saw the lightning and it was like lightning, bang, thunder. And I was like, oh, that's pretty close. I was like, this I didn't expect. So I kind of, in that moment, you saw it and you're sitting there, I think I was talking to one of the players or something, and I was just like, oh, dude, like, don't tell me we're going to get a rain delay or like the game's going to be suspended. We have to do this again like another week or whatever. You don't know the rulings around it, but I was just like, oh, okay. And then like, I came off and it was maybe like 10 minutes later and I'm like, I guess we'll play through it, and I'm sitting on the bench and one of the AFL kind of officials and stuff kind of comes over and has a few words with Fly, and he kind of looks at me and looks at the rest of the boys and goes, all right, cool, we're going to have to go into the sheds. And I was like, there's like 9.5 minutes left. The game at that point was, pretty well done and dusted, you'd almost say.
Yeah.
And you got to go in, and we waited for the 45 minutes sitting there and just going. And the worst bit was like the food was already down there for post. So you're smelling KFC, you're just sitting there, you smell the nuggets. You smell the chicken wrap. You're looking forward to that.
Sub me out.
You know there's beers in that cooler. There's beers in the esky. And you're sitting there looking at it going, I've got 9.5 minutes left, boys. Let's smash through this and we can enjoy the off season, all right? So you get back up, and I think we had like 5 minutes to warm up. It was absurd. So we like essentially straight back out, and then start playing right away. And,
did you fear that you could do a soft tissue or something?
Yeah, I mean, like I've had a bit of like hamstring awareness over the week and stuff like that. So I was on the bench to start off, and like I did a few extra runs and whatnot just to make sure that I kind of felt good and didn't want to ping a hamstring in the last 9 minutes of the season. So, it was one of those things. I felt like it was quite rushed, but understandable given a Friday night game. Families want to go home and stuff like that. But credit to the fans and everything else. They stayed towards the end, and it was great to see how many people were there, even after the that hour delay or whatever it was, to stick around for the end of the season. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess as a Collingwood fan, you're like, oh, we got 50 points up, last game of the year.
Yeah.
Like, we may as well stick it out. I think everyone probably wants to know, last game of your season, were you planning beers? Are you thinking this has pushed the plans back? What's the post-game sellies?
I mean, like, we were still a chance for, that last part of the season. But I think, you finish the game, you go, okay, chances that Carlton loses by 150 is probably not high. Plus, like, there is the bye week after. So, like, if you do have beers, it's not irresponsible to be 100%. Having beers after the game, right? So that's all kind of like set up after the game to have a few in the locker room and be able to share some with friends and family and things like that. So, the club had a bit of a celebration on Saturday. along that. And that's just kind of how it plays out over the end of the season. You just kind of go, okay, like this is all wrapped up, have a few drinks, get to celebrate what was. And, it's interesting because you look at a team and you look at the staff and admin, the physios and everything else. It's never the exact same every year. So there's going to be changes. There's going to be people that are in that room that won't be there the next year and won't be part of the next year's experience. And at some point in my career, that's going to be me. I'm going to be one of those people that doesn't show up, for the next year and going to be uncontracted, So I think the older you get, the more you realize that there's a lot of people that come and go from the system, and you have to really respect the fact that, it's just never going to be the same group of people every single year. There's going to be different faces and, different people will come in and you get to have an incredible experience and share life with them and, hopefully make some lifelong friendships. But it's never the same people every year, which is a bit of a sad reality you have to understand at the end of the year.
I never liked that last speech from the coach when they're like, look around the room, boys. It'll never be the same.
Never be the same,
oh, yeah, but don't say it.
Yeah, it is what it is.
One or two blokes that might still be there next year, the Dacos brothers. Don't know if you heard of them, but they're
pretty good, I'd say.
They're pretty good. 80 disposals between them, but Nick is the one that they're talking about. Brownlow chance. Do you reckon he's a Brownlow chance?
Yeah, I'm hoping. Very tough. Him and Bontempelli, I'd say, up there at the moment.
Cripps has come home
strong too. I'd love. Obviously, I'm super biased. you could say, but
if he gets one now, it's early. And then
it's early for him in the sense of his career.
Yeah, like he'll.
I would love for him to get one now, so then the pressure for him to get one's off. So you don't have to worry about the rest of his career.
I feel like if he gets one now, he's going to get like 6 of them.
Yeah, well, that's a possibility too, of course. But whenever he goes through a whole season and doesn't miss a game, I think that's one of the biggest things. If you have an injury or something like that, obviously hurts your Brownlow chances. So for him to have a whole season where he was healthy, I think it's a good chance for him to win a Brownlow. You look at most of the games, he's definitely best on ground for a fair chunk of them. So
he would have won the last one if he didn't get injured for a whole heap.
Exactly. So. There was like 3 games he missed and he would have won the Brownlow. So hopefully this year he can win that and get to celebrate that, which would be an awesome accomplishment in his life.
So what happens now? We will do another podcast where we talk about the future and fan questions and all of that stuff. But logistically, what happens now? So exit meetings Mad Monday.
Yeah, exit meetings this morning, and then going to a Wacky Wednesday is what we're doing. So
exit meetings just happen so quick, hey?
They do. Well, I think like they kind of prep it in the background, the docs and the physios and the high performance staff and stuff like that. They have to kind of be prepared because you can't just like smash that all into 2 days and expect you to be able to have all the programs ready. So there is, I guess, a bit of foresight in that sense. You go in there, you talk to the coach, you talk to the doctors and stuff. You go get scans. I've had probably 4 MRIs in the last week or 2 just to like make sure everything's all good and there's no issues. And if you need to get injections, get injections. You figure out your kind of recovery plan if you need that. You look at kind of your conditioning plan over the off season, your strength plan. There's so many things you put into place because you probably won't be back. For me, like I won't be back for almost 2 months.
Yeah.
So I'm going, okay, if that's a scenario, I need to have everything figured out for the next 2 months, scheduled properly to know whenever I leave, I don't need to have the club physically there for me to do something.
Do you have to do conditioning in the States?
Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah.
You got to go back to the state and go for a jog and hit the gym and stuff.
Yeah, I go to the gym every single day pretty much and then go run every other day.
Wash it down
with
some
brisket. What, do you think we just go on holiday, just drink piss for 2 weeks or 2 months?
Yeah.
No. Still professional athletes, brother. If you did that, you would come back so out of shape, there's no chance you'd ever get a game.
Yeah, I don't know.
We can't be like everyone else.
You
can't
just go and do I've seen you put away shit.
Here we go. You see me put a few back.
We have Cam Munster come through the studio.
Yeah.
He eats like 4 bloody, what's the Hungry Jack's big burger? The Whopper. He just puts them away. I'm like, it's different, I reckon. The big boys over at the NRL, they get to put on a bit of mass.
Yeah, they put on a bit more mass, I think we do. We try to run it off.
We need the protein. We did, last thing we talked about, Flyer spoke about how you'll just sit and you'll watch the finals and let it burn in you. Are you actually going to watch the finals? So you probably just skip those.
Geez, I don't know if I'll have access in Europe. I'm going to go over to Croatia for about 7 days, do a bit of a sailing thing.
Is your family there?
And the brothers are going to come with me. So I'm going to go do Croatia, and then I'm going to go over to Milan, take a train up to Como, do that, Lake Como for a few days. And then my brothers are meeting me in the Dolomites in Italy. So we're going to do a bit of hiking and some high altitude training. over there, which would be good for about a week, and then we'll finish up at Oktoberfest and maybe a Bayern Munich stadium game.
But you won't be drinking beers. You got to do your conditioning.
No. We'll be doing a week of hiking before then, so I think I'll be able to work it off.
It all evens out.
And then I'll go back to Austin, go back to see the family, spend some quality time with them. Obviously, being gone from them for so long, and it'd be good. I'll spend most of my time in Austin, Texas, with my brother at his house, and I've got a good kind of training regime there that I've done for over the last few years, so. Kind of do that and go to the USAFL. Shout out to them, to the brothers who play that. Do the national tournament there, which would be good fun. And just kind of support AFL internationally. Try to build the game over there.
Is Razor doing his last round of international football?
I was furious. I don't think he is. I told him, I said, man, like, who's going to come? He's like, I don't know, man. I was like, it's not going to be the same without you.
That would have been some celebrations over there.
Man, would have been loose.
But that's good. Me and Harrow probably head back to Rochi.
Yeah, same.
For a weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
I went out, did the 1,000 steps out at Dandenong. It's basically the same.
That's a holiday, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're both getting hiking in. It's nice.
Training, brother. You're getting into it.
Let's jump into finals predictions before we wrap it up. Port v Geelong in Adelaide, Western Bulldogs v Hawthorn at the MCG, Sydney v GWS at the SCG, Brisbane Carlton at the Gabba. That kicks us all off. But who are you tipping? We'll pick the tips, and then we'll just pick who we think is winning the flag. And that's how we'll wrap it up.
I've got Port versus Geelong. I got to go Port Adelaide. Incredible team. I think, honestly, Port Adelaide is going to win the whole thing.
Yep.
And I would love to see it because they've been up there for so long. They've had their chances and they've just missed out by a kick here and there, whatever it is. This year, they've got the momentum. They've got the team. They've got a home final. They've got everything that's kind of fallen in place for them. If they can win this game against Geelong, it's tough not to pick them for the grand final winner.
Yeah. Well, they're going to get a home prelim if they win this. Yeah. So, and then good luck going over there and beating them.
So I've got Port. Who do you have in that game?
Port. Yeah, Port.
You go to the Western Bulldogs versus Hawthorn. This is an interesting one because it's two informed teams. Hawthorn not really been in finals over the last 4 or 5 years. So young list, first experience doing it, very hyped up, very motivated at the moment. Western Bulldogs, experienced team, have players that kind of played in the grand final in 2016. And you'll rely on their kind of wealth of knowledge through this little period. At the MCG, talked about that with the Bulldogs being a home game for them. Interesting little choice.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, it sounds crazy to say, Hawthorn.
Yeah, after you just said all of that stuff.
Yeah.
I think...
I just love the way they're playing right now.
Yeah,
it's so good, so entertaining.
They're so, they're undeniable at the moment. It'd be interesting to see if they can just have them, the belief that, why not us? We can win this, we can go all the way through and we can just win it. I think I'm going to go the Bulldogs just purely on half the stuff you said around, you got Ads Chalor who's done it, you got Bont who's done it, you got Libba who's done it.
Experience.
And then the youth coming in the forward line. Plus you got Lob back who's short up their defence. But yeah, the forward line, if you get only one of them has to kick off. We saw Sam Darcy have 7 the other week and it's goals. You do that.
Sorry, Luke.
Sorry, Luke. So I'm going to go Western Bulldogs. Sydney GWS.
This is lovely.
I'm on GWS.
This is juicy. I love this one.
I'm on GWS. If they can get Toby Bedford back and Brett Daniels back, lock them in.
Okay, but then Sydney's got a few backs too.
Yeah, but I just GWS is in absolute form. Yeah, they lost to the Bulldogs, but it was without those two players who are super pivotal to how they play. But they're killing them in terms of form. They've been one of the most informed teams up there with Hawthorn.
This is the thing. If GWS wins this game, grand final for sure for them.
Oof. Okay.
Has to be, right? Because then they get the home final.
Yeah.
And then from there, they make the grand final, I'd say. No matter
Where
who
do they play their home final? SCG?
No, it'd have to be in the suburbs of the paddock.
Oh, we don't want to. They've time-stamped this. We've time-stamped it. You said it again. 3:50 Monday afternoon, 26th of August. What's
the stadium called? Do we even know?
NG.
NG Stadium.
Yeah,
NG. That's where they're going to play. Sorry about calling it
It has changed. It's changed a few times. It was Spotless.
I'm just trying to find the name.
So, yeah, are you going...
The Showgrounds. That's where they're playing. You can edit that out.
Are you going...
Just put a bleep. Just go. They know what it is.
The bleep sounds worse. Sydney or GWS?
I'm going to go Sydney in this game at the SCG, purely home ground.
They've been the best team all year.
They've been the best team all year. They finished pretty strong. I've just got this feeling a week of just refreshment is going to do them wonders.
Yep.
And then they'll hit this kind of last chunk with confidence.
Yeah.
And especially if they win this game, I don't see them not making the grand final. I say whoever wins this game is making the grand final.
They need to get some defense back up and running because if they're kicking it up there to Toby Green and Jesse Hogan, who's on absolute fire, good luck. Brisbane, Carlton.
Brisbane. Sorry, Carlton fans. I think you can understand where we're coming from.
Yeah.
6 of the last 9. You've lost. The 3 you've only won. Bottom 3 teams. Let's be realistic. Momentum is probably not on your side.
I tell you, if they kick 11 goals, 21 again, it's anyone's game because you can't be kicking that.
At the Gabba, not an away game. I feel like Carlton, look, I think the fans are in the same boat. They're going, look, obviously we're in the 8. We're hoping for the best, but I wouldn't say the confidence is too high.
Yeah,
Who do you have in the grand final then?
Yeah.
Obviously you're going Brisbane in this one, yeah?
Yeah. And then I think Port GWS, which on paper doesn't sound very appetizing.
That sounds like probably the worst situation the AFL could have asked for out of all those 8 teams as far as audience.
Yeah. See, I think I look at Geelong. I haven't been that convinced by them all year. Hawthorn, would love to see it, but also I'm happy to see that it's before their time. They had a big run of flags. You can have a builder year.
Yeah.
Western Bulldogs, would love to see it. Ads, love watching Ads play footy. Sydney, used to be a diehard Sydney fan. Wouldn't mind it either, to be honest.
Would love Brody Grundy to get a medal.
It would be great to see Sydney get up there, get the win. Port for Kenny, really. But Brisbane, they're a good team. Couldn't get it done last year. They've had a run of finals. Imagine if they did it from outside the top 4 after all that they've been through. So it'll be great. It's going to
be interesting.
It's competitive.
To say the least.
I reckon it's a competitive top 8 in the end because I didn't think we were going to settle there.
Yeah.
I think probably the 2 weakest teams on paper are Geelong and Carlton, and watch that come back to bite me because
I would love if they're both in the Grammy.
Geelong could easily just make it through. It's just what Geelong does.
Well, Geelong's got the experience. Maybe Tom Hawk comes back. Who knows?
Wow.
Time will tell, as they say.
Anyway, that's all we got for the year.
That's it for the year. We got one more episode, mate. We got one more coming. We got a fan question. We want to give back. We want to give back to the fans because this is obviously this is why we do it, to entertain people and to have them involved, to be able to answer all their burning questions they've been thinking about all year and give a bit of a wrap up to the whole season. It's going to be fun next week.
I love it. I love the fan questions. They're the best.
Sometimes they get a bit loose too.
Yeah.
Get a bit sideways.
It's good.
And we're fans of that. Big fans.
Big fans.
But that is it for us as far as, this episode. So massive thank you for listening in, tuning in through the whole thing. And just want to say, as always, follow us on social media, subscribe, all that good stuff. And thank you so much for being a supporter of us, the podcast, and everything we're doing. So you're an absolute legend, whoever's listening to this. I hope you have an incredible day. And sorry there's no footy next week. See you later.
Peace.